Grady Powell, host of Forged in Fire.
Kyle Mann.
I'm J. Warner Wallace.
Kira Davis.
It's Ben Adams.
Hey, this is Dave Baker.
Carrie Pomeroli.
This is Mike Reiner.
This is Ethan Nicole.
This is Leanne Morgan.
It's Graham Parker, the 5th GP, and this is why you should never.
How I got suckered in.
I'm so embarrassed that I'm here.
You're wasting your time. You got better things to do.
Never listen.
Those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
It is. Did you fix your glasses?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate. My name is Lucas Pickett. I'll be playing the Reverend today as I'm an actual pastor. And with me, as always, is a man whose spectacles have finally been repaired. It's Big Dan Gibson. What's up, Big Dan?
Man, I'm doing good.
Are you?
I realized the depths of my give up on life this last week when I realized that I could just bend my glasses back. And they have been, I don't know if y'all go back, but they've been hanging down like this. It's because I was just
For
like,
months.
they're broken and there's nothing I can do. Not true.
No, the only thing that was
Ended up not
broken
being
was
true.
your spirit.
My spirit. My spirit was broken.
Today on the show, we have the very talented bass player, Ian Martin Allison. Many of you will know Ian from Instagram or from Scott's Bass Lessons.
You may have heard him playing such sounds as and then synth.
Yeah, he does some really cool stuff with synth bass. He's played
That's
a
the
lot
guy.
with.
You heard that? That's him.
With Corey Wong from Wolfpack, but also Corey Wong and the Wong Notes. If you have checked out any of Corey's stuff on YouTube, they're good friends, both in the Minneapolis area right now. Ian talks to us a little bit about his journey from side musician to Instagram bass model to now being a large part of the Scott's Bass Lessons family. He discusses the oddities of having your own signature bass made and what it's like whenever somebody puts your name on a guitar and says, this is the Ian Allison signature. And maybe the apprehension of when you open up the box and you're like, do I hate it? As well as giving some really practical advice to people who are starting out playing the instrument and what to do moving forward.
And even for you.
Yeah.
You know, someone that's been playing for years, how do you stay engaged and keep pushing? And who can help you along that path?
Like, how many years more do I need to play before I not suck? We're like 20 years into this, and I'm like, you know what? I'm still pretty awful.
When does the not sucking begin?
Yeah, and Ian tells us, in my case, likely it won't. So make sure that you check out our episode with Ian Allison. If you're a fan of the show, like and subscribe to our channel. Follow it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a review so we know what stuff you like, what you don't like about the show, and we can make sure that we make the show more enjoyable for you guys. Without any further ado, on our show today, Expo is one of, he's become really one of my bass heroes over the last several months as I've rediscovered the instrument after a bit of a hiatus. He is the bass player for Eric Hutchins. He is the magical, mythical master of all things bass synth. It is the co-host of the SBL podcast, which you can find on all your podcasting apps. It is the wonderful, the handsome, the very talented Ian Allison. What's going on, dude?
That's like the best
I know.
intro
I know.
I've ever received. I just need to be taking notes and lessons from you guys. Can I sign up to do like a podcast course?
That would be great. You know what I'll do? I'll write that down and we can just send that to the next people that are going to do interviews with you and be like, this is the intro that's been approved by Ian.
This is the
Here's
formula.
how he likes to be introed.
Yeah.
Yes.
In our master class, it'll be. Our first class is introductions.
Introductions.
How to give a $10,000 introduction.
Hey, listen, man, there have been courses made on things that matter less.
This is
doing
true.
a great introduction is a skill.
It is.
And well done, fellas.
You're very good at it.
But thank you. So
I just sit here. I mean, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Let's get
well
into this.
done to you, Lucas.
Thank
not
you.
so much.
Thank you
Dan.
very much. Yep. I'll take all those pats on the back.
Yeah.
My first introduction to Ian came a few months ago. Around September, October, I had to something happened at the church that I work at. Our music director felt like it was time for him to move on to do some other things, and so he was a piano player. I hadn't played bass because the band was kind of his thing to direct. I had done that for years and gotten to be, the guy that was directing the band and the bass player and stuff. And I loved that position. But when he was doing that and I was moved into a different role, I wanted to make sure we kept those things separate. When I picked the instrument back up to like play it seriously again, one of the things I realized is that I suck at this. It's so hard, right? And so on Facebook, this stuff kept popping up about Scott's bass lessons. Sure. And I'd seen so many things with Scott Divine and, there's the glove. And so, immediately I'm like, all right, so why is this guy wearing his Michael Jackson glove? And I'm doing all this research. Right. And so I'm curious about Scott. Well, I got to say what captures me and what makes me sign up for the 14-day free course. And this is not something that SBL is paying for. This is like my legit story. So everybody that's listening needs to know that.
Got it.
So what makes me sign up for it is when Ian Allison comes on and says, these are the 10 bass lines that you need to learn with Bass Synth. And I see that YouTube video and I immediately am like, okay, this guy's doing something completely different with the instrument in a modern context that makes, the bass guitar not just relevant again, but super cool in the way that it was whenever, I remember the first time I heard Larry Graham play and I was like, I've got to figure out what that guy's doing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
That's the way that I felt whenever I saw my first Ian Allison video. So
wow, that's high praise.
So I want to know, like, how did you, let's start there. And then I want to talk about some of your career stuff too. How did you fall into bass synth? Because this has kind of become, part of the Ian Allison sound, whatever people think about you.
Sure. Oh man, there's a lot to actually unpack there, and I'm just trying to think about the best way to do it because I can ramble, you guys. I'm a rambler.
That's perfect.
But were you
born that way?
Yes.
What's that?
Yeah. Were you born that way?
Were you born that way?
You're born as a rambling man.
Rambling man. Oh, well done, fellas.
Thank you.
Quick on the game.
This is the only thing I do.
That was actually the first video that I made for SBL. And it's incredible. Like when I look back on that, I wasn't on staff. So now I work there. But at the time, I was just a contractor. And they were like, hey, they were kind of like testing the waters with me. Like, hey, do you want to make some content? I'd done maybe a couple like live streams. I'd made a little course for them too on sideman stuff. So I had this idea of like, there are people that talk about the side musician as this sort of banal, like milquetoast, boring entity that is just going to play kind of lame vanilla things on your record. And I don't think that has to be the case. In fact, I grew up loving side musicians like Tony Levin, who plays with Peter Gabriel, who were anything but that. And I think that, boy, as a result of tasting all of these different things, you might actually find what you love and want to pursue. And for me, I really discovered my love for playing synth bass lines on the electric bass. And for a long time, I kind of like poo-pooed it and would sort of like self-disparage and be like, it's not that cool. And if you want, a real thing, you should hire somebody that plays Moog and can do it for real. And then I turned 40 and had either, you could think about it as an awakening or a midlife crisis. I prefer to think about it as the former, an awakening.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what if I talked about this instead like I liked it? Because I do. And I was never saying that it's the same as playing synth bass. It's just a different lane. And so when SBL was like, hey, would you want to do sort of like a top 10 style video for us? I was just like, I'm going to do synth bass lines. And they were like, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, honestly, it was a bold first choice. I probably should have done, the top 10 Paul McCartney bass lines or the top 10 Flea bass lines. But I did this weird video of like, hey, you can use pedals in this chain to make your bass sound like a synthesizer. Should you want to pursue the weird avenues that I pursue? And then I make a case that you should want to pursue it because there are very few instruments that are like parallel universe. There's not like, if you learn to play the sax, I suppose maybe if you play an Iwi, it's like a parallel universe thing. But like if you learn to play the sax, you're just sort of playing the sax and there's nothing else that does the sax but isn't the sax. But if you think about bass, there's something else that does bass but isn't bass. It's a keyboard. And that's weird. There's not a lot of that in music, right? So like you have the bass guitar, You have the upright bass. Those are two very different worlds. And then you have like key bass. There's like 3 camps that are so different. And people don't talk enough, I think, about why it's so great to learn synth bass lines on the bass guitar, because it takes you out of your comfort zone and makes you play shapes and patterns and things that you never would play in a million years on the electric bass. And I fell in love with it and decided to kind of like plant my flag and make that my thing. And that's a very long answer to your question.
No, I mean, it's a great answer because it's working, right? Like you can say, oh, it's a long answer to the question, but I decided to plant my flag here. But a lot of people plant their flag in places that they die on incredibly dumb hills. This is one, like, as it relates to my own story of me becoming not just reinterested in the instrument, but now interested again in like learning new things. This was the avenue that opened to that door. So thanks for not making the Paul McCartney bassline video, because I've seen enough of that.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I love McCartney's stuff, but
I love Flea.
Yeah. And, but I will tell you, if you use an octave pedal, a little bit of fuzz, and an envelope, not one that goes like wah, but one that goes ow, then you can really do some sick stuff with the Paul McCartney bass lines, right? You play Come Together as a synth bass. Now my wife thinks it's cool. She's like, oh, that song. She's like, that's a weird song. I played it with a synth bass, and she's like, oh, you know what? That's not bad. It's like, you can thank Ian Allison for that. Yeah.
Synth bass cure all.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Electric, stand up, and key synth bass. You said those are the 3.
Yeah.
Which one, if you were a young lad wanting to meet a girl, which one would you suggest is the best one for picking up chicks?
Dude, listen.
Or is it the guitar?
It's the guitar.
Yeah.
The only reason you become a bass player is like you draw the shortest straw, or you're
Fine,
like
I'll
the
do
ugly
it.
friend. Like, dude, I mean, I wanted to play the drums, I wanted to play the guitar, and then those things were taken, and I sort of was like, oh, fine, I'll play this stupid bass, because that was like the only way in. And then you realize the amazing thing is when you get the bass, you realize, oh, actually, this is like the best, incredible secret that no one knows. So much power, so much subtlety, but like, you just stop playing for a moment and it feels like the world falls out from under your feet.
Yeah.
It's
Let's
just
do that.
incredible. It's an incredible instrument to play, and to like feel that power of like changing the chord with the note that you play. A single note, has all this weight. It's like, it's very cool.
So you've talked in the SBL podcast about how you were, in comparison to some of the other bassists, that especially those that are part of the Scott's Bass Lesson. That's what when we're saying SBL, that's what we're referring to.
Yeah.
Guys that are in that, that same circle, that you got your big break like later. Right, that you were 36 when you started playing with Eric Hutchins. That's how old I am now. I'm still waiting on that big break. Now, it's so cool to see that as part of your story. But before that, you had a pretty incredible music career before you got what you've considered your quote unquote big break. And you taught at a school. You taught bass. How did you end up with that gig? I want to hear that story,
dude. I mean, yeah. So briefly, I grew up in this little town in Montana. Had some really great like high school friends that then we became a band, right? And so we all moved out in stages out to the Midwest, to Minneapolis. I went to school, but then on the weekends we were getting together and playing like cover band shows in little towns outside of Minneapolis, and driving long distances, and and then like driving home with like the fur covered like cabinets in the backseat, just reeking of like beer and smoke. And I mean, it was like when you could smoke in bars. It was insane. And it was an amazing time. And then when I got out of college, I worked at a store called Mars Music. Do you guys remember Mars Music?
Yep.
Yeah, dude.
I bought a lot of Whirlwind cables from Mars Music 20 years ago.
I sold a lot of Whirlwind cables at Mars Music. Bought some myself. Yeah. I mean, and that was an amazing job. And then that, to anybody that doesn't know listening, that was like a competitor to GC, and it grew really quickly, and then it crashed. And I went down with the ship. I did a thing where, we sold all the inventory, and then I was the only person left in the store, and we were selling fixtures. Like we're selling like doors and the Macintosh computers that were still there, and the guitar hangers, and it was dark. And then that ended, and I was like, I remember writing a list of things that I thought that I could do, and like be a professional musician outside of my band just didn't seem feasible. So I remember writing down, one of the things I wrote down was vending machine guy. I thought that maybe I could be like a good vending machine guy.
I had that same thought like a week and a half ago.
Yeah,
because I have a step grandfather who married him much later, and he had a bunch of them, and he would go and he'd get hundreds of dollars out, and he'd go to Costco and go restock it, and he made some money on it.
Dude,
it's not a bad idea, dude.
There was a vending machine guy at a place at Mars Music, and he used to pop in and restock the machines, and he was cool, and sometimes he'd throw us a Coke, like, this dude's great. So I think I've always been such a people person. So if I find somebody in a profession or in a world and I like that person, I just automatically think that the job must be cool. I don't know if it's a character, like if it's a flaw or a positive trait. I'm not
you definitely
sure.
get your own hours, right? Being a vending machine guy.
Yeah, ish.
Vending machine guy.
You got to go when the store's open.
You got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not I think vending machine guy's cool, but I'm not trusting him with the key to Mars Music.
This was a very trusting vending machine guy, and so would I have been.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thankfully, yeah, man. I had a great friend named Matt Kirkwald, who's an unbelievable guitar player and producer in Minneapolis. He was working actually at a small, really small Christian school in downtown Minneapolis called North Central University, and he was like, "Hey, there's no bass teacher. They desperately need a bass teacher." Now, all the while, I was one of those guys that started teaching really too young. I was like the kid in my small town that was teaching bass lessons at the music store when I was 17. No business doing it. Like I had facility and was, so I could play flashy licks and attract students. So there'd be, 40-year-old men that I was showing how to play, ridiculous tapping licks to. And so all that continued, and I was teaching. So I had some experience anyway teaching, and this college was absolutely desperate to have somebody that knew something about the bass guitar, and they hired me, and I'm very thankful they did. Man, Dr. Herb Johnson hired me. I was thrilled, and so I got a gig teaching at this college, and I was there for 10 years, and I met a bunch of amazing people. And that opportunity is where I started to see myself more as maybe a side musician. I got to play a bunch of different things. I spent a lot of time playing in church music environments, playing in cover band environments. Those are two environments that I think don't get enough love in this industry. People don't talk about them enough as like wonderful places where you're sort of battle hardened in a sense as a musician. And boy, I really loved my time. And I still play. There's a church I play at every Sunday night in Minneapolis. It's my home church, Upper Room.
That's
I love
awesome.
it very much. I've been there for 15 years. So, but that experience really introduced me to that world. And then as a result of that world, I met a ton of people that were some in the church scene, some not. And it really brought me out into, the stuff that I'm doing now as a result of that teaching gig. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And now I'm going to try to plan my visit. I was a missionary up in Canada for about a year, and my wife has never met those people, and we're pregnant with our first. And so she's like, this is probably, thanks, man. She's like, this is the time where we probably need to go, because once we have the baby, it's going to be a lot harder. So we're going to have to just plan our Sunday night road trip up to Thunder Bay, Canada around watching Ian Allison at the at the Alpha Room. Like that's so awesome, right? And but that's a big encouragement to like the other players that are there. And you're right, like most of the guys that I grew up playing in church with, especially the older guys, were session players. We had a group of session players that played at the church, and as soon as I started playing, I was like 14. And they were like, hey, you know what? You look like you're passionate about this instrument that everybody hates. So why don't you come up here and then we'll teach you how to be better at it. And it is like you're talking about. It's battle hardened. It's an amazing opportunity. And if you commit to being there, dude, you get a lot of just stage time, which I think is really invaluable. So you get the start of the school. You're there for 10 years. How does that gig turn into Minneapolis, Eric Hutchins?
Yeah.
SBL.
Okay. So the Hutchinson thing happened in an interesting way. So when I was on the road with an artist named Lori Line, and she is a Midwest star. She's plays piano, and it's all instrumental music. So it's like, and it's mostly holiday music. And I did that gig for 4 years. And it was like costume changes, so it's part like theater.
Whoa!
And it was mostly on upright, and I suck at upright. And oh man, and she was sweet and hired me and took pity on me, and she liked my attitude. And she did this thing I'll never forget in my audition. She did this thing with her hands where she said, "Right now," she's like, "I really want to hire you, but she's like, right now your attitude is up here." And your talent is here. And there was like a really big disparity between your hands, you know, like the attitude hand was really high and the talent hand was really low. And she was like, but you know what? I think I want to give you a try because you're going to be in this band with all these like killers and you'll just learn so much. And I'm so thankful. Really, like the end of the day, that gig was incredible. Kenny Holman, who is one of Corey Wong's main sax players, was the musical director for Lori, and he took me under his wing, and I would play him. I was really working on jazz at the time, actually, because I was, teaching at this college, and so I'd like play. I had the Omni book, and I was playing like Parker Heads and stuff, and I'd say, Kenny, can I play something for you? And will you, give me feedback? Yeah. And, and he was like, don't swing it so hard. Just amazing. So that gig was great in a lot of ways. And then we had our first child. So I would have been 30, I'm trying to think, I'm 43 now. I would have been about 32 when we got pregnant with our daughter, Everly. And I just thought, man, I actually, dude, this was a time where TalkBass was really happening. Do you guys know TalkBass?
Yeah, the TalkBass forum. Oh yeah. I've been all over it this past week.
Okay, all right. Well, there used to be a thread on TalkBass called Ask JMJ. Are you guys familiar with Justin Meldal Johnson?
Yes.
So he probably will.
Yeah, like he played for Beck. He's an incredible producer. He produced the last couple Paramore records. He produced the last couple M83 records. He's a hero of mine. And he had a forum that you could just ask him questions. It was before he was a mega bass star. And I remember asking him on the forum, like, hey, do you have any thoughts about balancing career and family? I'm doing this road gig and we're about to have our first daughter, or, our first child. And I just would love any insight. And he was so, man, if I ever get to chat with him someday, I just really need to thank him because he was so cool about being honest. He said, I was married and we had a daughter, and I was married for 10 years while I was on the road. And he said, and I did the math and I realized that I was on the road about 6 of those 10 years. And he said, and they were good gigs. It was Tori Amos and Macy Gray and 9 Inch Nails and Beck. Yeah. And he said, and even still, it wasn't enough. Like I could fly them out. It was awesome. There'd be great snacks and catering and ice cream. And, it was amazing. The amenities. But it just wasn't enough.
It wasn't quantity time.
And he said, and then he said something that was so cool, cool in his honesty. He could have said, she didn't get it. Oh, she couldn't handle that I was a professional musician. He said, what I learned about myself is that I am married to music. And I was like, damn. I mean, it was very honest. And I think so many people pretend that they're not, but they actually are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, what-
and
what-
he and it put this thing in me of like, I can't at this point continue on this road gig and try to be also a good dad. And so I quit.
Whoa.
So this is the long way to get to the Eric Hutchinson the question that you asked. So I quit, and I think to myself, I'm 32. I'm done. I'm all done. Now it's it.
I'm
just
an
gonna
old
hang
guy
out.
now.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, like people
Make some sweet tea.
When you hit 32, that's when professional athletes and musicians retire, or they start making bad albums. Like, we're finished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Done. That's it. Yep. And I was just going to play in church, and I was just going to play,
Rock.
and I was just going to play with people around, friends, and it's all good. And it's all good. I loved those scenes, and I loved those people, and it was fine. But there was also like a little bit of grief, right? Like letting this thing die. And what happened was I started to pour myself into my town. And so instead of thinking about, the tour that I wish I were on or the city that I wish I could move to, I started to think about the people in my town that I loved and that I wanted to make music with. And I started to make more music with those people. And what happened was, inevitably, Minneapolis is an amazing music town. It's not considered one of the big three.
Right.
It's not, New York, LA, Nashville. But we sure think we're pretty puffy chested about it here. We love it. And what happened was I just made so many more connections in this town. So check this out. I do a gig with Michael Bland, who used to play with Prince. He also plays in that band Soul Asylum, and became friends with him, and he had a gig, and I love Michael so much. And he was like, hey man, I've got this gig. It's $50 and it's going to be a ton of work. And it was all synth sounds on electric bass. And he was like, would you do it? And I was like, yes. And I remember like prepping it, hours of prepping this material and trying to learn it, thinking $50, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? But then got there, and played at the rehearsal. And then there was this killing keyboard player, like over here, killing. And he was like, who are you? And I said, who are you? And his name was Elliot Blofus, who was the MD at the time for Eric Hutchinson. And so he was like, man, would you ever consider coming out and subbing? Our guy goes out with Hanson. You remember Mbop?
Oh, yeah.
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 Andrew Peruzzi, killing bass player. Our guy goes out with, Andrew goes out with Hanson, and we need somebody that could, can help out. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Are you kidding me? And so I tell this story a lot because, we tend to think, like you say, 30 to 32, it's done.
Yeah.
So from
Finished.
32 to like 36, I just worked really hard in my town and tried to make connections and do things here that felt like I wanted, that were exciting to me. And it led to that gig, playing the $50 gig and really, because I said yes, making my yes, and not being like, I can't believe I said yes to this. What am I doing? I'm not going to put it, for $50, I can't put in that kind of work. No, like I put in all the work and did the gig. And then it led to the best gig I've ever had, for sure.
Which is totally awesome because, and like you're talking about, like 36 for a musician is old. It might be really young for a vending machine guy, but it is old.
Yeah, dude.
It's old for
Yeah,
a
dude,
musician.
right.
And
Yeah.
getting that gig at 36, but it does speak to just like the character of, you as a musician, that you put that much effort into the $50 gig. You guys talked a little bit about on the SBL podcast, like choosing gigs.
Yeah.
And you basically were just like, hey, if you think the music is cool, do it and put effort into it, because you don't know, who the people you're gonna meet
Yeah.
are and what that's gonna be like. That's so cool.
It's interesting, man. I mean, I really do believe in that. And, I've talked about it and I've gotten some flack for it. This idea that like, hey, if it's cool, do it. And I've received some big blowback on that, actually, of like, oh, sure. Yeah. Well, that sounds like somebody with money, or that sounds like someone who doesn't have to worry about the roof over their head. I mean, I've always had to worry about the roof over my head. I have always felt like if there's something that has come up while still doing something that ensures the roof over my head. I mean, I've worked all kinds of things, teaching, done all kinds of different gigs, done, all kinds of odd jobs over the years. I mean, to provide the things that feel like stability. But then when there is an opportunity that comes along that I get excited about, I mean, this is actually another JMJ thing. I watched him talk about this. Someone asked him, even at the height, like when he was really crushing and doing all these big gigs and going out with Trent Reznor, and people were like, how do you charge for a session? And he said, if it's cool, I do it. And they said, what do you mean? And he said, it means that if I get excited, the money is meaningless almost. It's fine to get, I want to get a day rate. So I'll say, this is what I'd like to get. But if it's cool, I say, but whatever, I'll do it for whatever. And I used to not do that. I used to say, oh, well, I will charge X amount for the rehearsal and then this much for the show. And if and I won't do it for less, because I thought that's how you are a professional. But then I would lose things, or people would go, ooh, that's kind of too, I don't want to, I can't. And it feels odd to try to negotiate. Money is so weird in music. And I mean, I know that you guys know money is especially weird in church world with money, and music in church world is incredibly difficult to talk about for some reason. If I hear the word honorarium one more time, absolutely ridiculous.
It feels icky.
Oh, it does. It feels icky, and it shouldn't. But I feel like when I get that excited feeling, that feeling is going to lead me to money. And it's kind of, again, I'm seeing now the YouTube comments that I've received when I talk about this, because this is sort of this conservative idea of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and then then there is the more socially liberal perspective of first you need the boots to have the straps, right? And I understand that. But I think the thing that has always been the North Star for me is if I can figure out a way to prioritize the art, that always leads to other opportunities that then lead to money, Like the idea of that first gig that I did with this drummer, Michael Bland, that I loved, and I'm playing the synth bass stuff. It was so much work, but I believed in it because I believed in the people. I was excited to get to do my thing, playing pop music and playing it sounded like a Moog on electric bass. Like I was excited. The $50, it was meaningless because I met my friend Elliot Blofis, who was MD for Eric Hutchinson. I got that gig. He left. Now I'm musical director for Eric Hutchinson, right? Like if I would have been like, how much does it pay? My life would be different. Absolutely different. And it is no shade and no judgment to people that need to say, how much does it pay? Because I know that we need to make money.
Right.
But I have tried to set up my life in such a way that I take care of we live a modest life, take care of the things I need to take care of so that there's stability, and then leave room to say yes to something that you're excited about, so that not every gig just has to be a money maker, because it just doesn't promote creativity, at least in my world.
I think you're dead on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man.
Right.
Where he has to do everything. I mean, I know that's not the point you're making, but being open to a new experience, or potentially an experience that maybe you're undervaluing. I don't think it's only $50. I'm not going to get anything out of that. You don't know. Yeah,
because so much of the music business is about networking. It's about hanging out with people, finding other cool musicians that you like, and whether you make something that you both dig, or you both end up at a gig and you're like, wow, I really hated everything that we just played, and they're like, yeah, me too. What would you like to do? Anything other than this? Like, okay, well, I had fun playing with you. You want to go play anything other than this somewhere else? Those relationships are so important, and I think prioritizing that is amazing. I have really dug not just getting to hear you talk about the stuff that you've done with Eric Hutchinson, but now getting to see your stuff with Scott's bass lessons. So how did that relationship start, and how do you end up being the guy that's on the podcast, because there were other guys that were well entrenched into SBL and what was happening, but you have become like one of the big personas on it.
Right.
It's when I think of SBL, I think of Scott Devine, I think of you, and I think of Phil Mann. Those are those are the three guys. So how does that happen?
Okay, so check it out. I mean, when I turned 40 and had my awakening, I had spent the decade of my 20s in this rock band, and then I spent the decade of my 30s all doing side musician stuff. And there's pros and cons to both. I was tunnel visioned with my band. We're going to take over the world. Of course, we don't take over the world. Right now I pivot. Now it's side musician stuff for 10 years. And I go, ooh, I'm really missing some creativity. I'm really missing some, not so much creativity actually as just control over my own destiny, or at least a semblance of a felt control, like always being at an artist's whim of record cycle, tour cycle, right? I was like, man, I need somehow to combine these things. I need to feel like, in control, and also still the ability to play with other people. And what that was for me, it wasn't going to be like a slap bass record. It wasn't like I wasn't going to make, like an Ian Allison solo album. I mean, that's actually something I do want to make. But at the time, it was about content. I was like, I like speaking. I like presenting. I like talking about the things that I feel really passionate about. So what if I just take Instagram really seriously? That felt honestly easier to me and more fun than, well, now I need to book all this studio time and get a band together and go back through my phone and record all these ideas. Like making a record felt really daunting. Taking Instagram really seriously for a couple of months felt fun. So I was remodeling I was putting some hardwood floors in my little studio and buying a rug and just documenting that process. So instead of like, thinking about what post I could make and like what cool music I should play and the highlight reel, I was just shooting video of like, Uncle Rick coming over and helping put flooring in, and whenever I did something that was bass educational, I would tag Scott. So no fool I mean, I was definitely trying to target him. I wanted to get on his radar. Right. And I remember my wife saying to me, he's going to contact you within 1 year. And I thought, that's preposterous. He'll never contact me. I'll always be the guy like waving, from far away. Yeah. And there was a moment. Scott. Is that really? Yeah, exactly. Scott, hey, do you know me? I tag you a lot. I annoy you so much. There was this great moment where I had sort of taken a break, not an intentional break. I just hadn't posted in like 5 days or whatever. And I woke up and I had like 600 new followers, which almost doubled my follower count at the time. Whoa. I was like, what? Like, it was like, the thing appears in your, it's like the hearts and the thing and and it said 657 or something. And I was like, oh, what happened? And I found, and Scott Devine, 2 camera, he's doing this to his phone. He's going, Ian, where are you? I feel like you've gone. Everybody on SBL, I want you to go follow this app right now, Ian Martin Allison, because I feel like he's gone and he can't stop posting because I've become addicted to watching his stories, which I didn't know. I mean, I wasn't viewing any analytics at the time. And so he called me out in an amazing way. Right. Right. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's on. And so I messaged him and said, I love what you do. I'm good at X, Y, and Z. And this whole thing of like, if it's cool, do it. I really tried to apply that to Scott. I said, hey, I think that I could serve you in 1 to 3 of these arenas. If you think that I'd be good for anything that you do, just tell me and I'll just do it. Like, I'll just do it. Yeah. Like, I'm not like, and let's negotiate the contract and let's talk about money. And I just said, I'll just do it. Whatever. Just let me know. And dude, there was a day where he said, oh, that'd be so great. Yeah, maybe we'll. And it was all kind of pie in the sky. Right. And then, a few weeks later, he was like, I just sent you an email. And I was driving and I was like, oh, and I pulled the car over and I'll never forget. Like, I opened my email and it was this, like, I'd like you to do this. I'd like you to do this. I'd like you to do this. Here's what we pay for all of these things. And I looked at that and I wept. I wept. I just was like, oh, it's like, just the acknowledgement, the opportunity, right? The relationship that came from just trying to be me on the internet, taking this risk and like, hey, I'm going to try to be myself and post a lot on this platform, not floss, not just, try to play the fastest crap I can play, but really talk and play about the things that I really love. And this guy gets it and he wants me to be a part of it. And that's how it started, man. And so, I just did with Scott what I've tried to do with everybody else. I tried to do a really good job.
Yeah.
Like my first opportunity, I tried to just like kill it and put in the work. And not be like, oh, well, it's only X amount of dollars. I mean, it was very fair, a fine amount of money. But like, still you could say, oh, well, that's not worth, I mean, I put in like hundreds of hours making that first course, getting it all ready to go. But it led to then, again, the best thing I've ever been a part of, which is SBL. It's amazing, man.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
It's just little steps. Like Scott would say, can you do this? I'd say, yep. And he'd say, can you do this? And I'd say, yes. And I would really try to do it well. There are a few things I haven't done so well, but then having the humility to say, ooh, I don't know that I'll be great at this. Or, we were just having that conversation today. He was like, is there too much on your plate? If there is, you just need to tell me, because he just throws stuff at me and I want to say yes and I want to do it, but I need a cloning device.
Yeah, which would be great if we could clone you, because one of you could go on tour and the other one could just give lessons to the rest of us plebs.
Yeah, dude.
So that's really, that's the truth of the matter. So you're working with SPL now. Now you're on the podcast. I got to watch my very first feature this past week where you are looking at people's like recordings and giving them feedback.
Oh, yeah.
I think this probably is my favorite feature on the site now, and I've got it like running in the background because like hearing what people are playing and then hearing the feedback while I'm doing other things has been super helpful. I might ask a cringy question here, right? So, like, how do you ever give feedback to people and say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna give you a little bit of feedback, but I'm not gonna use your video because I don't want to put that out there." Is there like a backdoor where you do that kind of thing, or is it just the videos you pick get the feedback?
No. Actually, it's so funny that you talk about this. So there's a program on SBL called Student Focus, and it is not as popular as I think it should be. And it's kind of like Scott actually did it himself. He did like 140 episodes of it himself before I came on. And then he was like, can you take over Student Focus, or can we share it? So that's another thing I did. I would do, every 2 weeks, he would do the other 2 weeks. We do it twice a month. And I love it. I love it. But here's the thing, man. Not very many people submit to that program because it's actually pretty vulnerable and like difficult to get something together enough, get a camera and a light and, have an audio setup. I mean, you guys know, like it takes some wherewithal to like make that thing happen and then put it up for critique. I mean, it's funny. Like I just did one. I submitted to the program. There's a new guy named Craig Strain who's doing it now too. He's great. His name is Bass Lessons Melbourne. He lives in Australia. On Instagram, he's an amazing player, great dude. And so he was like, "Hey, we should trade sometime." And I was like, "Oh, that's such a great idea." And so I did this piece that I felt like I have a chord melody arrangement of All the Things You Are, this old jazz standard that I've been working on for years. And I submitted it and I was all sweaty palms and, so it's like, what can be better about this? How's my phrasing? And then he just sent one back to me. And that's all public too. So the last one has my submission and this next one that I do will have his. But yeah, it's typically about 20 students that do it. And no, we don't. Currently, there aren't enough people that actually use that feature. And we can handle like the workload. It's fine.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy it. And I think when people do that, when people are like humble themselves enough to say, here's the thing I'm working on, I want your feedback on XYZ, you're getting the good out of it by even going there to begin with.
Right.
You know, like creating that video and talking about what you want feedback on, you kind of already know what I'm going to say, probably. Now, there's cases where there's technique stuff that they're not seeing, and I say, ooh, careful where, your wrist angle or pinky or whatever. But I mean, people that submit to that program, my hat's off like forever, because it's so vulnerable. The whole place can watch you, watch you suck at something or watch you be great at something, and everywhere in between. But my feedback is never like, oh, this sucks. It's like, hey, this is incredible that you're participating. Here's the things that will take you to the next level.
I always feel like if I submit to that the immediate response is going to be shame.
You suck. You suck. You suck.
Yeah, like that's it.
Wait, dude, you got to do it. Lucas, you got to do it.
I appreciate that you feel that way. So
you got to do it, man. It's the best. And listen, there's people that have been playing for 6 months, and and they're like working on just fretting a note clean. I mean, it's all the way to like, what I hate actually is when the jazz monsters submit, because there are these people that are like, can you talk to me about soloing over giant steps at 240 beats per minute? And they're like, I'm just like, I have nothing to say to you. Feeling like I need, to be taking lessons from you. So it's really wide in the people that submit to that program. It's great.
I'm gonna have Danley submit as me.
Yeah.
There we go.
And that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do.
It'll be me playing I'll Fly Away on bass.
That'd be great. Little Route 5. Let's go.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm curious. Oh, go ahead. I've totally dominated this entire interview because I'm geeking out over talking to Ian Allison.
I just want to know, there's a YouTuber that
I know where this is going,
that Lucas has introduced me to, as well as you, named Davey504. I'm curious if you know who he is.
Of course.
Okay.
So are you a slapper?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I slap like, oh yeah. I say, OMG.
Dude, that is, I wasn't expecting his brand of humor.
No, it's
when he showed it to me, and I was like, this is like one of the funniest dudes on the planet.
It's unreal.
And he is
he's an insane bass player.
But he's also one of those that gives like the bass player vibe, in the sense that like we're not looking for the spotlight. We're all pretty chill and laid back. And it's like, somebody's like, oh, I did something great. And we're like, nah.
Dude,
that was really busy, man.
Yeah. I mean, he's created all of this crazy like meme culture in music.
Yeah.
I mean, he's such an interesting case study. Like, I mean, I respect him in so many ways. If you go back and look at his early videos, I mean, I've been a fan of his for a long time, because he used to not talk.
Yeah.
Like in the years ago, he would just post these fun videos, and like, it became this thing of like, oh, people would comment like, oh, that's impressive, but what can you do? Like, could you do it on a 6-string bass? And then he would, and like, oh, I wonder if there's anything bigger than that. And then his creativity got going, and then he's ordering he had this crazy 24-string bass made.
I
and
saw that a couple days ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like
insane.
That's a huge video for him. But
he played that thing all.
I
was just saying, he played that thing all the way up the fret, all 24 strings.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
All the way up the
crazy,
neck.
and his creativity is so huge. And the thing that I love about him more than his playing is that he knows who he is, and he has doubled down on the things that he used to feel embarrassed about.
Right.
Like he felt embarrassed that he had like such an Italian accent and didn't want to speak in Italian on his channel, because he wanted to have like a wider appeal. But when he spoke English, he felt self-conscious about it, and so he never would. But then he figured out a lane. So instead of like, oh, I can't do it, he figured out like, well, what if he just had kind of a character? Mm-hmm. What if he like he took those things that he felt embarrassed about, turned them out, pushed them out, and made it a thing? And it is so his thing. it's actually been really inspirational to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a great friend named Jonathan Marin, who's a killing bass player, and he has this quote. He says, "Your vulnerability is your voice." And man, I think about it every day, you guys. Like, the thing that you feel scared of, ashamed of, vulnerable about, embarrassed about, what if you could figure out a way to embrace that thing, make it your own, turn it outward, present it as a positive thing, and make it your voice? This same friend, Jonathan Marin, is like, the thing that you're scared of? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's actually your. That's your. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, like that synth bass stuff that you're kind of like afraid to post about. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's who you are.
Yeah.
So like, what if
your
you
niche.
figure out a way to do it and just not care if there's somebody that thinks it's dumb? I mean, Davey 504 gets so much hate.
Yeah.
Right. And like but he has figured out a lane. And it's so cool. So I'm so attracted to people that have figured out a lane and figured out a way to embrace the things, the quirks, the deficiencies, quote unquote, right? The shame, the embarrassment, and turn it out. You know, I'm endlessly inspired by that.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got one more bass question, and then we want to get to some stuff about
Because I know you want to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, we're going to get to some stuff in a galaxy far, far away.
Let's go.
So you posted something today, and I've seen you play this bass a couple of times, and you've got like a bass library and in your studio. You have a signature bass.
Yeah.
I want to know how that came about and what all of the switches and stuff on that thing do, because that's an incredible looking instrument.
Trying to see where it is right now. I can just show it to you. Hang on.
Let me
just grab it.
Sweet.
This is what you want.
Yeah, this is one of the coolest instruments that I've seen, and he posted something today on Instagram. So today is, we're recording this on March 29th, so go back on Ian Allison's Instagram, find March 29th, the video. He just picks up the bass, and he's like, sometimes you get inspired to do stuff, and when you start playing around, you end up making music. Yeah, we actually watched it before the show, and it's this wicked synth bass thing that he just came up with today. There he is. With this gorgeous.
I still have that pedal plugged in right here. That the Way Huge Atreides, which is so sick.
That's
pedal
awesome.
named after Dune, which is like a pedal that I must have.
Absolutely.
This is the bass that you asked about. This is
Yes.
made by Saku Vuore, and it's a company called Vuoren Saku, and they're in Finland. And check it out. I mean, I made a video for SBL it was a top 10 Rage Against the Machine video because I loved Timmy C's bass playing growing up.
Yeah.
A huge Evil Empire fan, and I love that band very much. And this guy who makes these killing guitars mostly, and basses too, but mostly guitars in Finland, makes these incredible instruments. And he hit me up and was like, hey, could I make you a bass? And I was like, yeah.
No.
Sure. And then I was like, I'd never heard of it before, and I didn't know how to pronounce it well. It's incredible. Saku is Zachary or Zach, and Vuore is of the mountains. So this dude's name is Zachary of the Mountains.
That's awesome.
Like, this is amazing. and then I knew I'm acquaintances with Vince Van Tricht, who works. He's a master builder at Fender.
Okay.
And he was like, "Oh, Saku's legit." He was like, "All the master builders follow him." And I was like,
okay.
"Oh, that's cool." So man, we just got chatting, and he was like, "Listen, what I want for this instrument." Because I haven't done a ton of basses. What I want is for you to just like have it in the back of your shot. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you like, if I make it, would you just have it in the back? And I was like, no. I think I'd like to play it. I mean, right? Like, right? And he was like, well, right. But that's all I would want. Is it for just to be visible sometimes? And I was like, dude, if we do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then we got really excited. So I was able to, there's tons of, I could spend a lot of time talking about this, but It's, to me, it's all of the things about Fenders that I love.
Okay.
So to me, it's equal parts jazz bass with the 2 single coil pickups.
Right.
But it's also an offset body. But it's also a short scale, like a Mustang. It has a big, thick baseball bat, early 50s P neck, reverse headstock like that early P bass. And then it has all of this switching capability to do like Jazzmaster and bass 6 sounds.
Okay.
So like I love bass 6 and I love this kind of thing. And there's like a hollow cavity here in the back, and it's just all of the Fender things that I love. It's like this culmination of all of the Fenders in one amazing instrument. All these amazing hidden functions. Pop that up. What does that do, guys? I'll tell you. It engages this switch right here, which is like a tone capsule that is like rolling off high end and accentuating mid range for when I do the sort of more like baritone bass 6 vibe stuff.
Right.
Switches are just pick up on and off.
Which
and this switch is series parallel for the pickups.
Right.
And that's it. That's what it does.
that
so
bass
sick.
definitely hits the Spjorg note.
Yeah.
Yes, no doubt about, and where it's from, right? It's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Good job, Zachary of the Mountains.
Yeah,
Well
Zachary of
done.
the Mountains. He's the best. And he was like, hey, what do you want it made out of? Check this out. This is great. He was like, what do you want it made out of? And I was like, what is the most Finnish thing that you could make it out of? And he was like,
Jorgenstein.
what?
Nothing.
yeah. He goes,
got to cut
there is an old school that the floorboards are being torn up, and it's beautiful
like, that,
Finnish
I want
pine.
that.
And he's like, and I want to make it out of that. And I was like, dude, do it. Yeah, let's do that. So
Wow.
it was so fun because I got to choose some stuff, and then I let him choose some stuff, and he made, I mean, honestly, like I was worried, you know, because like he was like, I want to call it the Ian Allison signature, and I'm like, okay, like I hope it doesn't suck, you know, right? Like, 'cause, like you don't know.
Yeah.
But I knew it probably wouldn't suck.
Right.
I mean, like, look at this. He was even like, oh, I'm going to tint the edges here more than I'm going to tint the center. Paula does all this hand carving. Of all
Oh
that.
my
That's
gosh.
fantastic.
Dude, it's you should like, you guys should check out the guitars too.
I hear you on wanting your signature to be something good.
Yeah.
There's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh,
Larry David gets a sandwich made after him, and I think it's like gefilte fish or something. And he tries to get Ted Danson to switch with him
because his sandwich is
sucks.
terrible. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Look, I think you've got a great bass. I
Yeah.
think if
Oh,
Hattori Hanzo made you a sword, you use it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I have this thing with instruments too, where like I'm really comfortable on a Fender jazz bass. I have like a couple of jazz basses that I use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have this version or like gear in me where if I'm playing something that isn't the thing that I'm really used to, I want to bend myself to accommodate it. I feel that way about pedals too. I'm not just going to play the same licks and in the same way and then be like, oh, this pedal sucks. I'm going to try to get the music out of the pedal. I'm going to try to like accommodate it, treat it like, instead of like, oh, this isn't the perfect thing. I mean, it actually kind of is, but what I was expecting was like, oh, it won't be the perfect thing, and I will bend myself to accommodate it. It's that thing of like, you get married and there's no perfect person. You have to work on you. You got to work on you. It's the same thing with instruments. It's like everybody's like looking for the perfect, the holy grail. It does not exist. The best instrument is the one that you spend the time getting to know, I think.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, and I got to say that's what my relationship with my bassist has been like.
I'm jumping off, and we can start our next segment here.
Yeah. Yeah.
explaining it.
Yeah.
You explain it every week, and you do a great job.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks. Well, so we end all of our interviews with a segment we call Controlled Rowdiness, which is just a series of rapid fire questions that you can answer as short or as at length as you want to. There are no right answers, but there are several wrong ones, so you don't want to step in on any of those landmines.
Certainly not.
Right? Yeah. So, Dan, we'll roll to you to get started, because this is where we're going to get some of our Star Wars content.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Starting off with, have you named your signature bass?
I have not. I'm not into it. Not into naming basses. I don't know why. It feels too, I don't know, like possessive or something. I don't name them because I really like the idea of them moving on and the story continuing like long after I'm gone.
Okay.
I think the greatest gift is the space we leave when we're gone for other things to flourish.
That's what Jesus said.
Yeah. And I like that you used flourish.
Well, I was going to suggest naming it Amidala to start off this Star Wars talk, but I hear you. You don't like to name them.
Yeah.
That is totally in your court.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. Amidala is a cool name, though.
It is cool.
It's a cool name.
And it gets to start off with our Star Wars chat.
Yeah. So, looking at the new Star Wars content that's coming out, right? Are you more excited for the Obi-Wan series, the Ahsoka series, or the next season of Bad Batch?
Definitely Obi-Wan after that trailer. The trailer is sick. I love Bad Batch too. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. I just want it to be about characters. My main thing with Star Wars is connect me to these characters, please. And when I feel connected to the characters, then I'm in. But if I feel like it's all action or it's all fan service or it's not connecting, it's not doing a good job of character arc, I struggle.
Do you feel like Boba Fett was a good job of character arc?
I do not.
You think it was fan service?
I do. Yeah. I don't think I needed that. In fact, I wish in some ways that Boba Fett would have remained more of a mystery. I think it was the series that I didn't need. And I mean, I enjoyed it and I watched it, but I'm far more interested in Grogu, Din Djarin, The Mandalorian, because we don't have any baggage with that. I didn't like the first movie my dad took me to as like a tiny kid was, Empire Strikes Back. I think I was like 3 or 4 years old. Oh, that's took me to see that movie. Right. So like I have all of this grumpy old man Star Wars.
I know, me too. I know already everything that you're gonna say. I know.
We're there.
I know, and I agree.
Yeah. So I want there to be new stories, and I want it to be centered around characters. I think the best thing that Filoni did with Jon Favreau was do that dynamic between the gunslinger and then the helpless child who turns out isn't helpless and is going to save his life. That to me is some of the best Star Wars storytelling of all time, and that's what I want. I want more. I want new characters. I want things that I don't bring a lot of baggage to. That said, seeing Obi-Wan and Darth light it up again, it's going to be
It's
fun.
exactly what's going to happen in Obi-Wan, where we see established characters that we get more of a backstory.
I know, you're right.
But I'm very excited to see Ewan McGregor back. I think he's probably the best acting in the Star Wars.
In the prequels, for sure.
Yeah, in the prequels, for sure. Who do you think? Who do you think is the best actor in all of Star Wars? Who did the best acting job?
This may be controversial.
Good.
But I didn't love the sequels, like as a whole. I thought they were flawed in many ways, but I love Adam Driver.
Yeah.
I loved Kylo Ren. I loved his arc. When I watch Rise of Skywalker, that scene with him and Rey where she meets him, and then because his mother calls to him from afar, and then his father that he kills shows up and talks. I love Kylo Ren's character so much. And I know that, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to proclaim it from a mountaintop. I loved that character. And I love how it was written. Even though there's stuff about those movies that I think's trash, I think his character was incredible.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why
Quentin.
why do characters with awesome helmets take them off? For instance, Kylo Ren, Judge Dredd, RoboCop, Darth Vader, that end up taking it off and make the fans mad.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem to be like there's all of these vehicles where they take their helmet off and it makes everyone mad. Like Kylo Ren. I loved Kylo Ren. I didn't like it when he took his helmet off. I want to go put it back on.
Yeah, but keep your helmet and your shirt on, Kylo Ren.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Totally. But okay, but check out this perspective. Just I wonder what you think of this.
We hate
the
it.
mask was a front. The mask was right. The mask was him trying to ape his grandfather.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually taking it off was like that was actually the strength.
Yeah.
You know, like taking it off and not having to try to live up to Grandpa Vader, but like being his own dude. I loved it. I love the mask coming off for him.
That's really cool, but don't make a cool mask. Like get a bad mask.
You think he just needs like a Groucho Marx set of glasses and be like, those are dumb.
Yes, the
Take that thing
Mandalorian.
off.
I mean, I've given a long list of cool helmets that people take it off. And granted, like the actors is in the movie, they want themselves to be seen so they can get more work. I say, what about the character?
Yeah. Speaking of characters and old man, there's been a lot of controversy in Star Wars, which I think we can say just about nearly anything that's Star Wars related at this point, with the transition from live action to animated or animated to live action for a lot of the characters, right? Are you disappointed in the look of the live action Grand Inquisitor?
It's so loaded. It's such a loaded question because I know you are by how you asked that question.
Like, we had all this really fun bass talk, and now we're going to get to the stuff where Ian gets in trouble with Disney.
Like, I better say the right thing. Okay, check it out. I didn't actually, no. It pinged me. It was lame. It pinged me. I was like, ooh. But I also want to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm not like into like jumping on it right away.
Right.
But yeah, man, I watch all that stuff. I mean, I watch Den of Nerds and I watch New Rock Stars and, you know, people that are doing the, you know, like, oh, if they just would have done the yellow eyes. Right. Like if they just would have done the yellow eyes on the Grand Inquisitor, that even just that would have, yeah. And I have, my daughter is a huge Star Wars fan and a huge fan of the prequels. She's 10. Ahsoka is her favorite character.
Naturally.
And she was like, she saw Rosario Dawson and was like, oh, her head tails are too short. Like, Dad, no. No. She's like, her head tails are too short. And I was like, I know, but they couldn't make them too long because she had to, you know, unless they were going to CG all of her action.
Right.
And she was like, doesn't matter. It sucks. Her head tails are too short. So I get it. You know, we have these things. We already have baggage with the animated stuff. It's wild.
Yeah. And you know what? First off, tell your daughter they're called Liku. Right, so get it right.
Yes.
No, but like second, like the big thing is they shortened them in Rebels, and so there are a lot of people that were like, you know, that doesn't fit the Ahsoka that we got. But again, new animation styles, moving. Right, I do think Rosario Dawson's a really good choice for Ahsoka though. Like she's got the look, she's got the attitude for it. Do you think
she's got the double white lightsabers that came out of nowhere?
Those came out of the Ahsoka book, Danley.
Oh yeah, I don't remember that.
Those were Sith crystals that were purified.
That's Thank you.
Oh, look at that.
Thank you, Ian Allison. They're Sith crystals that were purified.
That we talked about this. No, we talked about that.
We did talk about.
I forgot.
Yep. There's also so if you like the new Rockstar stuff, there's a podcast that you absolutely have to check out called Tatooine Sons. Right.
I should.
So they're friends of ours. And they actually got to name a canon Star Wars creature. They got to name one of the Porgs, and he became canon. But it's a dad and his two sons.
Yeah, and they talk about to name it.
Yeah, and they talk about Star Wars. They've been doing it for the last few years. It's absolutely amazing. It's just a cool, like, you know, parent and kid vibe. Plus, they're talking about pop culture and looking at it from not just the parent and kid perspective, but also like how cool some of the new stuff is. So, all right, Danny, last two questions.
Okay, cool. Actually, I would say I have two, and they're not Star Wars related.
Beauty. All right, do your two, and then I'm taking one.
Okay. What do you think is the funniest guitar cable manufacturer? Name.
Funniest?
The name.
Yeah.
The funniest guitar cable manufacturer
Yeah. The name.
is
Let's see if you get this right.
Planet Waves.
No, it's Neutrik.
Dang it.
That was close, though.
That was really close.
Okay, last question for me. We determined in this conversation that at the age of 32, all side musicians go to a retirement home.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. That's right.
So my question is, what are some of the activities to add enrichment to the aging resident bass players?
Ooh.
There needs to be a weekly bass off where everyone gets together and slaps a lick ferociously, and
To keep the
9
arthritis
bass
at bay.
players enter, 1 bass player emerges. That's pretty dark.
I like that.
Well, they're not like killing each other, but yeah.
It's high stakes.
Yeah,
high
it's
stakes.
very, very high
home.
stakes. Yep.
What about you? What do you think?
So I mean, a slap off is definitely what all bassists would want to do, right? It would just be a matter of like, do you make special concessions for, whether or not you can wrestle your bass into your wheelchair, because
Yes.
that's difficult
Oh yeah,
to do.
man. The arm, the
Yeah,
things
right?
here. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
tricky.
so like, is there a handicap that you get to apply if you're in a wheelchair? So, last question for you: do you know the name of the type of space music played in the Tatooine Cantina?
I mean, I know that it's played by Figrin Don and the modal nodes.
Right, which is amazing. But do you know what George Lucas named it?
I wish I could say yes. Tell me.
So he replaced a vowel in the word jazz. And if you could think of like, what is the worst thing to call this music with another
No.
vowel?
Yes.
It is Space Jizz. That is the name of the
No, it
music
isn't.
style that the Cantina band plays.
No.
So with that piece of information now unable to exit your memory, we thank you, Ian Allison. Tell our listeners where it is that they can follow you on social media and how they can get
you
connected
guys,
with
this
you.
has been so fun. First of all, thank you so much for having me. What a treat to chat with you guys. Thanks for your flexibility on the time as well.
Oh, yeah.
I am very active on Instagram. That is sort of home base, pun intended. It shouldn't have been, but that is Ian Martin Allison. I'm the guy that I wish I could have just got Ian Allison, but it was taken, and I had to use my middle name, and now people call me that, and it's hilarious. Sounds like my parents, chiding me for not doing my chores. But yes, Ian Martin Allison on Instagram. I'm also available at SBL. But if you're not a member of Scott's Bass Lessons, come and hang out with me on Instagram. I'm still trying to get back to every DM. I try to make that a daily practice of trying to answer all the DMs.
That's shorthand for Dungeon Master. For those
Yes,
who don't
he's
know.
answering all the dungeon masters, but only if you roll an 18 plus. Like you don't
right.
get an answer unless you get a crit. That's actually how we got a hold of Ethan, of Ian, and so I can tell you that is absolutely true. He does answer his DMs
With one crit?
Yeah, with one crit. I had to actually show me rolling the die until I got it.
Take a
That's when I
video.
finally got the answer. Dude, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. We appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Ian freaking Allison.
I feel like a truffle pig when I'm doing that.
I'm gonna let it just die there. All the truffle pig comparisons. I feel like there's no place where we can go that ends in our friendship being edified.
Cool. So Ian was cool.
Yeah, Ian was cool. I loved talking to Ian about the Star Wars stuff. He's a huge Star Wars fan. So Controlled Rowdiness was a lot of fun with him. Also, his journey to getting on Scott's Bass Lessons is so wild, man, that he started off as a side musician. He was going to give up on music, and then he decides to start this Instagram channel, and he just starts tagging Scott in everything. And that's how he gets noticed. Now, obviously, the dude is incredibly talented and doing some really unique stuff with the bass. Like, he's recently put out a video where he's talking about creating the 808 sound that's in so much pop music with the bass. And in order to do it, that you've got to scoop. So most scoops, you come from, down low on the guitar and you're boom. This is the opposite direction, that you slide down to the note in order to do that.
If I'm being honest, that's my favorite way to slide anyways.
Is down to the note? Yeah. And so this is a really intentional, like sliding down, like wow, wow. And it's
How many
it's
guitar sounds can it
so
make?
crazy. So it's really cool to see the way that he is innovative on the instrument.
Yeah.
And how that has not just served him in his professional life as a studio musician, but now he's taking that and he's giving that knowledge to other people. I also really dug him talking about the Scott's bass lesson, like the lesson corner, where you go in, you like show yourself playing something, which is a huge vulnerable thing. He's recently done some of those to let the other instructors look at. And as he's come back on, he's like, listen, I hate this. Like, this is so vulnerable because I'm playing things, and he's like, I know what kind of player I am. I know what my strengths are. And to have somebody else look at me who's also a professional bassist and also a friend of his and be like,
awesome.
Hey,
He's awesome.
you should maybe be careful how you're using your left hand, because I think some of those ghost notes are not notes that you need. You're just doing it because, you're trying to keep time instead of just leaving space. And he's like, I don't know if I can do that. And it's like, it's so cool. I really, really dig the dude's energy too. He was so much fun to have onto the show. Ian, thanks so much. You guys make sure that you check out all the links in the show notes for Scott's bass lessons, for the free stuff that they're doing with SBL Academy, as well as Ian's Instagram and his upcoming touring dates with Eric Hutchinson, as well as the stuff to his band, The Orange Goodness, who has just put out some really, really cool music that features Ian Martin Allison on the bass guitar. So thank you guys for watching.
Yeah, we love you, except for Jared.
Y'all have good give.
What's up? I am Ian Martin Allison, side musician, bass player with Eric Hutchinson, Scott's Bass Lessons. And this is why you should never, ever, under any circumstance, listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate.